Hi everybody, this is Kevin, a CPA that does financial planning. The name of this video is Low Carbs Get Wealthy. Okay, so what do carbohydrates have to do with wealth? Well, I think actually they have a lot to do with it, because if you are doing all your financial planning and you're investing and you get to a place in the future where you finally are going to spend your money and you don't have your health, well, that's a huge problem. So I'm going to be talking about something known as the ketogenic diet, the keto diet, low carbs, high fat, low carbs, healthy fat. That's one of my favorite ways to look at it, but it's just basically the low carb. And I'm going to offer up a couple books, some YouTube videos, some recommended websites. What I would suggest to you is to do your own research, okay? Now, I'm not a physician. I'm not a nutritionist. Never trained in any of those areas. What I do have to offer is I'm a CPA, a board certified CPA in Tennessee. I am professionally skeptical. We CPAs are a skeptical bunch. We like to see the actual data. So I've actually looked at some of the studies that have been cited in multiple books and videos, and you know, the whole nutrition is kind of a mess, actually. There's not really great nutritional guidance that's based on studies. So what I'm going to try to do today is only to motivate you to look at what I've seen. That's it. I don't have any, even though there's a food pyramid right here, the keto food pyramid, I don't have any financial interest. This is not any pyramid scheme that I'm trying to drum up. The only indirect financial interest, for full disclosure, is that if some of my clients actually are able to lose weight, avoid heart disease, diabetes, maybe some cancers that obesity causes, and maybe even Alzheimer's, if some of my clients actually live longer and healthier, then maybe I'll make more money. But that's really, I think, about the only thing I could think of as a financial disclosure. So I'm going to tell you my own story around girth. But first, let's talk about what the dietary guidelines are. Now, what I've seen on the internet is anytime anyone makes a video or writes on a blog, there's people that are attacking. There's the people that are vegetarians or vegans, and they attack, and then there's the people that are the low fat, and they attack the carb people. And I'm kind of becoming a dog in the fight here. That's a terrible expression, but I'm kind of becoming that because I'm believing more in the low carb. But if I don't say something correct, please forgive me and correct me. I'm on a journey here. And if I'm not using the most up-to-date information, again, please correct me. But the food pyramid, the big issue back in the 60s and 70s, in 1960 and 1970, and then the 80s, was they were trying to get the fat out of the diet. Basically, some really respected thought leaders said fat is linked to heart disease. We found out about cholesterol. It was all about calories in, calories out, but we don't want fat. And so we need to use fat sparingly. And so what ended up happening is you have to eat something. And that's what people always say when I tell them on a low carb lifestyle. They say, well, what do you eat? Well, there's lots of really good food to eat when you take out carbs and you replace it with fat, meat, cheese, dairy products. Again, some people will say, well, you shouldn't do dairy because dairy has some carbs in it. And, you know, the whole saturated and non-saturated fat, not getting into it here. And some vegetables. But the food pyramid actually told us to eat carbs, and these are carbs that turn to sugar. Now, you see sugar added here, but they don't say, hey, you should eat cupcakes and drink Kool-Aid. That's not what they've ever said, and a lot of people blame people for being food addicts and eating a lot of sugar and eating a lot of carbs. But really, the whole mission at the beginning with really good people was to get fat out of the diet. So what we see now, and I'm going to talk about Jason Fung and Sarah Hallberg. I don't know if I said that name correctly, Hallberg, and some other doctors. I'm going to show you that say that actually replace the carbs with fat. That's the way we ate before the 1960s and 70s. Before we had fat phobia. Eat fat. And this is the crazy thing when you learn this. So let me tell you my story, okay? So I was a high school and college athlete. I got out, and just like everybody else, I started creeping up, and This is getting bigger and bigger. And so in 1998, I went on the Atkins diet, and I lost 20 pounds and was immediately told, you are crazy. You're eating too much protein. Your kidneys are going to, I don't know, shrink up and die because of the amount of protein that they have to take care of. And so I was told not to do it. I had lost 20 pounds. I went off of it. Last year, I went on a low carb diet. And then near the end of the year, I lost 20 pounds. At the end of the year was the holidays, and I started eating sugar and carbs again and got right back off the low carb bandwagon. This year, about a month ago, went to my physician and found out that I weighed 240 pounds. And so also found out some of the parameters that I have. I wasn't diabetic or anything like that, but my metabolic numbers were going in the wrong direction. So I started again looking at this. But last year, the reason why I got motivated to start checking this out was two of my friends went on low carb diets. One lost like a person. I mean, he lost a lot of weight and he kept it off and he still looks really good, but he really lost a lot of weight. And he even told his son that carbs are killers. None of these things are simple, and I know that. There are good carbs. But anyway, and then my other friend lost a lot of weight on it, and so I lost a lot of weight on it. But this year, I've really discovered something fundamental, is that to be on a keto diet, which I'll tell you in a minute what keto is, to be on a low-carb diet, really the things that you hate about it and the things that you're going to give up, the sugar, the simple carbs, that after 2 weeks, if you really lower them down enough, you stop craving them. And you switch over from using sugar as fuel to using ketones as fuel, okay? So you're using fat as fuel. So what we want to do in a ketogenic diet, and now I'll talk about the ketogenic diet, is we want to lower the grams of carbohydrates down to 20 or 30. Now, MyFitnessPal is what I use. You can find another app or something else, but you want to lower those grams down. And the only way you can do that is to actually put the food in your FitnessPal and figure out how much carbs is in there. And you're going to mess it up. And I've messed it up in the last 3.5 weeks I've been doing this. I've messed it up. I've also lost 16 pounds, and I feel terrific. The other thing that I did not know, really, and we talked about the keto or the low carb feeling like crap. I think that's what we called it. 3 or 4 weeks into it, you feel bad. Well, with keto, what you're doing is you're really limiting the carbs. And so you need to get off sugar and carbs and switch to fat burning. And so the first 2 weeks of going on keto, I felt bad at certain times of the day. I had headaches, everything. Now that I'm 3.5 weeks into it, I am off sugar burning and I'm on fat burning. Now, do we still produce sugar? Yes, we still do. When we eat food, our liver will turn fat into sugar with the process of gluconeogenesis. So the birth of sugar will be done by our liver. So we still have sugar in our bloodstream, but we don't have so much because our body prefers sugar if it can get it. If it can't get it, it loves ketones. So you have to get keto adapted or fat adapted or whatever you want to call it. And now the last 1.5 weeks, I've been feeling awesome. And that's the reason why I made this, is to say, check this out. I feel awesome. I don't crave food, which is really remarkable. So for me anyway. So some of the things that I've learned about in the last journey is obesity is toxic, and eating less, starvation diets, the standard American diets, eating low fat, you feel hungry all the time, it's not going to work. Will low carb work? If you really learn about it, I believe it will. I think it's a much better chance of working than the standard American diets, which they call are SAD, standard American diets. I've learned about Inuit, Canadian, which are like the Indians in Canada, the American Pima, Native Americans, in the United States, and how their diet used to be all fat and protein and very little in the way of carbs. And when they switched to the recommended diet, they all got fat, very fat. And look around. I mean, if you have somebody that you love, you owe it to them. If they're overweight, it's embarrassing. We think it's just their fault. And when I got to 240, my wife, who loves me, says, just don't eat so much cake. And when you're eating carbs, you crave carbs, you crave sugar. At least I did. Now, maybe that's not the same for you, but I did. Complex carbs are good. Most of the time you have to eat them, it's vegetables for the most part. Eating fat, 65% of the calories or the caloric intake will come from fat. And again, I'll show you the references that I have that say that this is good, not bad. It's crazy. So people knew that cholesterol, LDL rising, was bad. They said, let's take fat out of the diet. Now, fat never really showed, if you eat fat, dietary cholesterol never showed that it produced a higher serum cholesterol, at least not meaningful, maybe a little higher LDL. But we got fat out of the diet. We were so fat phobic that we created a bigger mess. We got sugar and carbs now that create us to get fat. Now how does this work, okay? Well, there's a hormone that's called insulin, that when insulin rises, it rises because there's either too much sugar or there's too much carb, which all turns to sugar. And actually protein can make insulin rise a bit as well, but not as pronounced. But as insulin rises, insulin is called the fat hormone. Insulin will allow, has to do something with all the sugar, or we would die of sugar toxicity. So it pushes it into muscle and fat and makes our fat cells grow. So by eating sugar, we grow fat. By eating fat, we don't grow fat. It's really quite amazing. Again, do your own research. But most of the diet you're going to eat is fat. Now, people will say, well, I don't know what I'm going to eat. Well, that's the reason why you have to follow through and be motivated to learn about keto or low fat. There's lots of good resources about where you can find out how to eat and use different types of flour and use different types of food. And it's really delicious. Sarah, Hallberg says, eat real food. That's the rule. If you eat real food, you'll be fine. So let's go to the resources that I have. Let me first show you the books. So Gary Taubes, Taubes, is really an interesting guy. I've seen a lot of videos on the internet. One of the cooking channels, the woman talked about this book as saving her life. She had been obese her whole life, and somebody in her church told her to take a look at this book. She read the book, and I'll show you her website, Cooking Keto with Christy, I think is what it's called. And so it's why we get fat and what to do about it. So just to try to motivate you to look at this book, and if you're a client of ours, I am happy to buy you a $10 copy here. Please let me get you one of these books if you'll read it. But what Gary was a food a writer and media person, and he was tasked to go and find out the research on a lot of different diets. He was a physicist by training, and so he wanted to find out, where's the data? Show me the data. And what he found was it was a miserable sort of data, and that nutrition based on the standard American diet with low fat and high carb, there really was not a lot of good research. Now, because that's the thing that people will say about low carb. Well, low carb, there's not good research. Well, there wasn't good research for low fat either. And so why we get fat, he goes through all these different people. That part of the book I didn't enjoy quite as much, but he really presses upon us the different people and all the different diets, like why do some Japanese eat a lot of rice and other types of carbs and not gain weight? He says it's because of sugar. But he goes through all the different types of populations. He goes through all the arguments why low fat might have been good. And then he goes through the arguments about low carb. And I find it very, very persuasive. And he has a real passion about it. Now, he gets hammered on the internet because people say, well, he blah, 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 blah. Well, I really find him to be passionate about what he's talking about. And so this is the cliff notes of another book that he wrote that was just way too scientific. So this is the easy book to read, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. The other book is called Living Low Carb by Johnny Bowden. He is a PhD and he is a nutritionist. And what Johnny does is he says, find the low carb lifestyle that you can stick with. And he tells you, I think there's like 23 of these different quote unquote diets or lifestyles. But in the journey to find out about which is going to work for you, I think he does a wonderful job of saying how you can control carbs. He talks about keto, which is ketogenic, which is using ketone bodies for fuel, the fat, but he also just talks about lowering the carbs to a certain level that, again, you'll enjoy. So I put down the word thought leaders here, and that's, or words, thought leaders, and that's kind of funny because, you know, there's thought leaders are supposed to be people that do all the thinking for us. But these are people that I found really interesting in the low carb movement. Jason Fung, Gary Taubes is the news person who is a physicist. Dr. Sarah Hallberg, her TED Talk is fantastic. She's the one who I finally figured out that carbs are actually not a necessary food group. I was pretty shocked that you need 0 carbs to live off of. I showed you the books, some of the websites, ruled.me, eatingacademy.com, dietdoctor.com, and then the video channels, the YouTube channels. Let me pull that up for you. Okay, the first one is Cooking Keto with Christy. This is the woman that was obese her whole life and was told about the book from Gary and read the book, and she actually talks about what to eat and how to eat it. Jason Fung is a scientist. He is a kidney doctor, MD, up in Canada, and he goes through all the studies. He has a 5-hour program on obesity, what causes obesity. Ruled Me, I watched all 5. I'm a dork. Ruled Me, Filter You. This is Sarah Hallberg's website or YouTube channel, fantastic. And then Carb Loaded. Again, all these different people, they're making a documentary about carbs. So these are the channels that I watch. So I will leave you with this. If you save all your money, you invest all your money, and you live in old age, and you're sick or you feel sick, you're not going to enjoy your retirement. I feel a lot better eating ketogenic. After the first 2 weeks, I feel fantastic. I feel more hopeful than ever. I'm not having these spikes up and down of insulin. So I believe the current way I feel is terrific. But if you can live in a way that you can be more healthy, you can be more hopeful for the future. So thanks so much for watching. Again, I'm Kevin, a CPA that does financial planning today, talking about keto. Thanks for watching.